I often say to people is emotional labor is going to be done. Which form of it is going to happen? If you do not like a situation that's in front of you, you're either going to do the emotional labor of going through a divorce, going through a separation, feeling unheard and managing your tone and pretending like things are okay. That's emotional labor itself. Or they want to do some level of emotional labor to have better conversations with their partner.
Welcome to the Marriage and Motherhood Podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Perda. As a marriage coach who's married with 3 kids, I know how much parenthood could change a marriage. If flirting, laughing, and having fun together feels like a thing of the past, then I'm here to teach you that marriage doesn't have to feel so hard with your parents, and your marriage can thrive even when you're in the season of raising kids. Whether you're in a good place in your marriage and you just want to continue growing together, or you're wondering if you even like your spouse anymore, this podcast has something for you. Join me here each week as we dive into what it takes to help your marriage grow, and maybe even do a 180. You'll learn ways to handle conflict better, bring that spark back into your relationship, as well as learn how to improve other areas of your life from my lovely guest experts. Are you ready for the next stage of your life in marriage? Let's dive in. Hello. Welcome back to another episode of the Marriage and Motherhood Podcast. I'm so thrilled today for this episode because not only do we have the first guy on this show, okay? Like, I've only had female guests on this show. Most of them, I would say like 95% of them are moms, so that they can relate to you and they can really speak to what your experience is and give you that insight into how they're doing things differently, right? And when I came across Zach's Instagram page, he's an invisible labor coach for men, okay? Like, okay, cue, like, all the relief, all the excitement. I get it. Like, I'm thrilled for you. And I was like, okay, I have to have him on the show because not only are you going to feel like validated, but I'm hoping you're going to walk away from this episode feeling like, oh, I have some things that I can now take action on. I can even forward this episode to my husband and he can listen and not be like, well, okay, tune you out, right? But really hear it from a male perspective on what they can start to do differently, how they can start to look at the situation differently. Because let's be honest here, right? Like, we're all familiar with the scene of, the women doing every fucking thing, okay? Like, this is my mom, right? All the cooking, the cleaning, the planning, the shuttling the kids around, all that while she worked full time, by the way. And my dad worked and watched sports as soon as he got home. He would come home, get something to eat, plop his butt on the couch, and watch sports. And I'm loving that a lot more women today are starting to realize and learn more about the mental load, the emotional load, the logistical load. And now we're in this era, or hopefully shift in dynamic, where men are like, I'm noticing my wife is a lot more angry and resentful now. What is happening? This is not how I grew up with how couples work. So what do I do? And so I'm excited to talk to you, Zach, because this is not about blaming men. This is not about man shaming, mansplaining, any of the stuff that you've heard. This is about helping bring more partnership into what marriage should be about, right? Where both the man and the woman, or however your relationship works, bring more respect, kindness, partnership, everything that you wanted when you got married. And so, Zach, that was a very long intro, but I'm so excited to have you here. And can you please share with the listeners who don't know you yet, and I'd be surprised if they don't know you because you're all over Instagram, where you live, how old your kids are, and what made you want to do this incredible work where you're helping men, families just connect more and function better.
So we live in Northeast America. We have a 4-year-old that is in preschool right now, and we are currently, I think we're at week 15 of twin pregnancy right now. And Alyssa and I, this is my full-time job, and Alyssa also has a full-time job. She probably works close to 30 hours a week. I'm probably working somewhere between like 30 to 40 hours a week.
Amazing. And how did you get started? Because like most men have no idea what invisible labor is, and you went and turned this into your career.
Yeah, that was not necessarily the intention when it started, but yeah, for me, it started with I always wanted to be a content creator. I self-published a book in 2016, very generic kind of self-help book, probably for a really young 20-something from me, a 26-year-old at the time. And as I wrote it, I was like, I should probably make some like marketing materials of sorts so that my parents are not my only customers, that they're never actually going to read it. They're just going to throw it on the mantle. So I started making YouTube videos. I was a middle school teacher at the time. And as I was making videos, I just really started enjoying making YouTube videos for my students. I wanted them to have more than Jake and Logan Paul influencing them on the internet, rather than them just seeing me in the context of in front of the classroom teaching math. And over time, I just came to really love making videos. It actually became an issue in our relationship. I was spending so much time on this very excitable, shiny object career of being a YouTuber with my 1,000 subscribers. Meanwhile, we just bought a multifamily house, and I was not putting in 10% of the cognition into this giant purchase we just had comparatively to my shiny object YouTube. So we actually got separated for about 3 months. We came back together after we did some work on ourselves, went to therapy. And then I was like, okay, I need to kind of put YouTube down. So I went much slower. If I really felt passionate, I was making a video. And then at some point, my students were like, I just went viral on TikTok. I got 1 million views from doing this little thing. I'm like, make some dumb shit. Like, why is everyone watching this? So I was like, okay, they're putting like no energy into these videos. I can do that. So I would listen to my audiobook on the way to work, and then I would make a little 90-second, 30-second video, and it would take me 5 minutes to make. And I was like, okay, this isn't going to break my marriage. I can spend 5 minutes on it a day. So I was like committed. I was like, I'm going to be a TikTok creator for a bit. And then 9 months in, I didn't really grow much. A child came, and the habit I had formed of having it be a semi-personal diary on TikTok, I started sharing about what fatherhood was like. And I went on 3 months of paternity leave. And from a couple of my early videos talking about fatherhood, performed really, got a lot of audience to it. And I quickly had an audience of about 50,000, mostly moms, in about 3 weeks from when our child was born. I guess just a mixture of like people had never heard of. A couple of videos that performed really well were, one, I recognized I used my newborn at kind of as clickbait. She was crying in the background, and I was meaning to acknowledge moms for the sacrifices that they're making. I was on my 7 p.m. to 3 a.m. shift of being with her while I was trying to get mom to nap. And a lot of people thought that I wasn't feeding our child from 7 p.m. to 3 a.m. And got very confused that they didn't read all the captions to the video. And then I shared about how I stopped drinking during her pregnancy. And I didn't want to have my first drink until she had her first one. I shared about how I really actually struggled to fall in love with our newborn. And that was a terrifying experience. I thought I was a sociopath. I think 30 something people stitched that video and talked about theirs too. So quickly had this like audience of women, but I also recognized I have a lot of shame around this, is that I was honestly using my child as a prop. They're in almost every single video. I would make a video without her, views would go down. I was like, making the next video with her on my chest. And so at some point I recognized it was not healthy, and I didn't want to do that to her. So I stopped, and my following also stopped growing. And then about 9 months later, I started reading the Fair Play book. I'd asked my audience, like, I'm looking for a next book. Roe v. Wade had just been overturned, and I was like kind of lost because I didn't feel like I had a voice. I felt I didn't want to be a mansplainer in the social climate. So I was like, I'll do some reading. And so a bunch of people recommended I read Fair Play. And so I started sharing first my reactions to the chapters. And then I started sharing the implementation process of the Fair Play method. And as I started that, I made my first video saying, I think I just added mental load for my wife. All I did was I said, what do you want to put on her for pajamas? I probably could have figured that out and just said, hey, here's what I'm thinking. And, it got an above average amount of viewership. I was like, maybe I'll try that again. I'm sure I'm doing it every day, everywhere. So the next day I made another video saying I think I did it again. Part 1 of the mental load series. And I said, do you want to do water or milk? Our child was sick. She was 1.5, 2 at the time. Normally she goes down with milk, but because she was sick, probably didn't make sense. Probably should do water. But I didn't give a default answer, and I just gave her the option and had her choose. I said, I think what I could have done is probably just give a default response hey, I'm going to prepare some milk for her. I think that'll help her go down easier, even though she's, kind of congested. That one hit 6.4 million views. And I didn't understand quite why people were so validated in that video. But I think as any good content creator, and I felt like I was doing good in the world, I just kept going. So 10 parts later, I made a bunch of different mental load example videos of me trying to be vulnerable or me just acknowledging the difference between how we're doing things. I was able to quickly relate it to my experience as a math teacher when I was making an honors test versus a standard class test. You just leave it open-ended and you give them less information, and then they have to come up with more information. You add more mental load. Or you give them multiple choice, you give them the diagram, you give them every single number that you can give them except for the answer, so that they have to do less work. You give them more scaffolding to make it. You take away all the mental load and give them a question. So that's the difference between an honors and a standard test. We can be doing that with our partners. So today I'm on part 339, I think, of the mental load series. So I've made somewhere around 1,500 videos since 2021. My proudest number is not my following necessarily, but that I've made 1.7 videos per day. I think about 3 months into talking about it, people started asking, women started saying, can you explain this to my husband? Can you make some materials? Do you have a book? And so I decided to start coaching men. And then I had sort of enough traffic, enough people coming my way that I was able to leave my job and go full time at the beginning of 2024.
Incredible. That is so amazing. And yeah, I get it. I would really have liked that video too. I mean, because you're basically pushing the choice to her, water or milk, instead of taking the time to process well, what would the best decision be if I were to make it? Because then you're essentially telling your wife, you're in charge of all the choices.
Yeah.
Here are your options. Better than open-ended, but still putting the ownership on the mom, which there's already assumed ownership there from just societal expectations and all that. So anyway, okay, you had mentioned fair play.
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping that majority of listeners already know what this is, but let's not assume. Can you share with people what the fair play method is?
So the Fair Play method was developed by Eve Rodsky. She originally made I think it was a Facebook post or something called the Shit I Do List back in the early 2010s. And all of her girlfriend, or I think it was just an email chain of women forwarding it to their friends. She eventually developed this ginormous spreadsheet of thousands of tiny little activities and tasks that mostly moms were doing. She turned that into the Fair Play book. And I think the simple way I would explain it to somebody is, I think a lot of people think, let's just divide up all the chores and stuff in our home, which is generally good advice, but very specifically, how would you do that? And I'm going to present it in a way that helps it sound ridiculous in a corporate setting. Let's say you have a marketing person and an HR person. Would you want the marketing person to do some of the hiring choices for different areas of the company? And would you want the HR person to both do some of their HR duties, but also, work on brand colors and logo design? No, you'd probably silo those into their roles. What a lot of people do, and what she points out, because she's a lawyer and an organizational, I forget how to describe what she does. She helps like very wealthy families figure out like their trust funds and stuff. She helps people silo their ownership and responsibilities. I'm not actually recognizing. I don't love the metaphor I just aimed for, but that's okay. What a lot of people will do is, and even we still do it today, but because we can acknowledge the invisible labor, it doesn't hurt as much, and we don't feel the residual pain from it. Alyssa said to me earlier, like, hey, can you start taking over communications with the painter? She's going to be gone for the weekend. She's going to a conference for her career. We have painters right now working on painting the house that we moved into recently. She has been owning all the communications. Now, what she could do is she could say, hey, I need you to do X. I need you to do Y. I need you to do Z. So the doing, like the executing of things. Fair play differentiates the doing is execution, but there's also planning and conception. So for us to acknowledge that there is planning and conception for things, then you can actually hand over ownership. So I need to make sure when I'm being handed off communications with the painters that we all have the same goals. We have generally, like, we know what the things are. It could be really easy for her to say, hey, can you text the painter? It might feel easy on the surface. Hey, can you text the painter, like, I want to do this and that? But then she's still doing the conception planning. So I still really don't love the way I'm going about this, but
Well, because like if you texted, you would then go back to Alyssa with, this is what they said, what do you want to do next?
Yeah.
So you're still not owning it.
Still delegating, yeah. Mm-hmm. So I think when we're able to create minimum standards of care, again, fair play, similar to like a standard operating procedure, when we can create standard operating procedures in our home, agree on them, both people be good at doing them, then you can hand over the entire ownership of something and just say, hey, I need you to take on laundry. And it's not a question of, okay, which loads do you need to do? Where's the stuff? What buttons do I hit? You've already talked about what that standard is. So you can be like, yep, I will take over, 5:00 today. So it's really differentiating the difference between full siloed ownership of tasks and being able to hand it back off to each other, rather than task delegation of one person still owns it and is handing it back off. Now, I think a lot of people, even that have implemented the fair play method, they still have sort of a default owner of a lot of tasks. And I do think that has some usefulness, but like, as Alyssa's been pregnant, I've had to take on full ownership of the kitty litter box. I'm often thinking about it. The previous couple of years, she's owned it a lot less than I have because I took it on in our first pregnancy 4 years ago. But there is still cognitive labor that she does on it, but it's been handed back over to me. So a lot of the challenge for me is, how do I build systems so that I'm not just remembering, which I can't count on myself to remember things, but how can I build systems so that she's able to hand things off to me effectively and not have to keep owning the conception and the planning and have me just do the tasking.
Yeah, that kind of sounds like a difference between a manager versus an assistant.
Yeah.
Right? And I think traditionally in households, the mom, the wife, whatever, has been the manager of the entire household, including children and, any maintenance of the household, like keeping it running and all of that. And the husband or dad, however you want to refer to him, has been the person that's like, okay, where's my honey-do list? And okay, I'll mark these off. Is it how you want it to be? And it's like, it's still something that the woman has had to carry, right? Mm-hmm. And even like that nagging feeling like, oh, are they doing it yet? Has it been done yet? Let me check on it. There's still mental load going on, even if
Yeah,
she's handed it off.
And I'll give you an example that just came up this week, which I definitely have some shame around this coming up. So buckle up. Hoping the vulnerability here will help. One, create some relatability here for those that are unfamiliar with me. One of my fun names that I call myself is a recovering man-child. A lot of people don't love the word man-child. So when they think of man-child, they think of like literally a child. I think a man-child is typically, they just don't see invisible labor. They don't necessarily value invisible labor, and or they're been taught a lot of things via capitalism and patriarchy that are very normal to them. So recently, this past week, we went down to my parents and her parents for Thanksgiving. When we went down there, again, because Alyssa's been pregnant, I've been doing probably 90% of the physical management of our child. Bring her, if we got to go grocery shopping, she's coming with me. If we're going to the park, I'm bringing her and letting Alyssa rest whenever she can. She ended up getting sick, and we recognized it was an illness that had to have been passed via probably not hand washing and or her putting her hands in her mouth or something. It couldn't have been, it was not an illness that could have been like breathing in something. So she pointed out to me, she's like, I feel like you're not doing enough hand washing with her. And there's also a moment where I forgot a bag. We were in between our parents' houses. It was an hour away. It was all the hygiene products. It was toothbrushes, toothpaste, her prenatal vitamins, soap, hair stuff. I didn't pack those things. And because probably partially because I didn't pack them, it wasn't on my radar the same way it was for her. But we were 45 minutes away when we realized we didn't have it. I ended up driving up very early the next morning to go grab it before anyone woke up, so it didn't impact the family, just impacted my sleep a little bit. And what I'm hoping people take away from this is, yes, there are absolutely still moments where I am a recovering man-child. Like, I'm still working on growing up every day, and I am not perfect, and I still make a lot of mistakes. The main difference is because of my understanding of invisible labor, because of my understanding of my own emotions and her emotions about invisible labor, I'm not getting nearly as defensive as I was a couple years ago. I can hear her totally differently. I can validate her very differently. So as she was saying, like, I'm feeling, this is a teary-eyed conversation, I'm feeling really lonely that I feel like I'm the only one thinking about hand washing. When you come in and you just came from the park, I don't have the confidence that you've washed your hands. And so I'm the one saying, Zach, have you sanitized hands yet? Have you done that yet? And I know it's going to take a good amount of trust building, maybe a couple weeks, maybe a couple months of me saying yes every single time for her to feel like she can put that accountability down. Like, okay, he's got it. I don't have to ask anymore. I can click X out that tab in my Chrome browser brain. And so I host a weekly meeting. This is what I coach all the men that I work with to do. I host a weekly meeting. We call it the boring meeting. Originally, it was because she found them really boring, and I reclaimed it and made an acronym: baseline routines, operations, relationship repair, initiative taking, nurturing, and game planning. And so what I brought to that was my game plan for how I'm going to improve my awareness around hygiene. So I'm planning on buying a handful more hand sanitizers, adding one to the door where our child gets in our SUV, adding one to right when she walks in the door. I also added automations to my phone every time we leave 2 or 3 of the main places where she's probably going to get her hands dirty: the grocery store, in the cart, school, and or the library that we go to. Every time we leave there, I get a notification on my phone to sanitize if I'm not already seeing the extra bottles in and around our car. So what I think I did well in there was, when she felt lonely about it, I wasn't being dismissive of her loneliness around it. Because I get that, is that she feels like she's the only one thinking about it. And I know how lonely that feels. I've been trying to make economic changes with buying less things from Amazon. And I participated in the Black Friday blackout. Meanwhile, she's like, I've been wanting this thing for 7 months, and now it's on sale for half off. Like, I'm buying it. Sorry, no thanks. So like, I feel lonely in trying to, make social change in those things. I feel lonely often in feeling like we're managing some of the spending that we're doing in our house. At the same time, I know she feels lonely in a lot of other things. And so what I think we're pretty good at is consistently talking about it, regulating it, acknowledging that sometimes there isn't always activity change that needs to happen, but emotional validation. So like earlier today, so when her child was sick, she puked on her shoes. They've been sitting in a trash bag. Neither of us have gotten to it over the last couple of days, a little fearful of the stench that's going to be unleashed. But I saw it. I was like, that's got to get done very soon. So I put it under my desk this morning. I get up earlier than everyone, so everyone saw my clothes start to gather around my desk area, which is in the living room. This morning, she was walking by it. She looked at it. She looked at me. She said, I am feeling some overwhelm about this situation here, and just kind of pointed to that area. And then she saw the concerned look on my face. She said, you actually don't need to do anything. I just need you to acknowledge that I'm feeling that way. And I was really grateful that that was what I needed to hear, and be like, gotcha. You are overwhelmed. I hear that. Probably fearful that it's going to get worse before it gets better. I get that. So I think, I hope that gives kind of a good example of, I'm still not owning 100% of mental load, but because I understand it, I can regulate her emotions. I can validate them better, and I'm getting significantly less defensive.
Yeah. And I love that you're showing it's a process, right? You're making an effort to grow your level of awareness, and you are acknowledging that you're not fully there yet, but you're doing what you can think of. You're taking in what she's sharing and, feeling your feelings about it, but not letting your feelings block you from moving forward. And I know that a lot of my listeners are just exhausted, right? They're tired of having all the things that they're doing on top of managing what many people joke as their, extra child, hence their husband, right? Because they're another person to tell what to do, another person to consider how to help the family run better, all those things. Instead of feeling like I have a true partner, I have a co-leader, right? And I would love to hear from you, being in the position that you're in, right? Being a recovering man-child, as you say. How can we help women approach things differently while also understanding the nuance of like, oh, this again is falling on me to change this?
Yeah. So I'm going to reference a coaching call I had recently. This is not a normal coaching call that I had. So I work with 95% men. Oftentimes I have a 30-day check-in call with couples, because I want to hear from her too if there's changes, not just if he says things are getting better. And while we're talking, this was one of the few scenarios where woman's signed them up, and like she's kind of pulling them along. And again, this is abnormal for the folks I work with. But in that, one of the things that we aimed for was me just helping him label invisible labor. So one of the things that I have men do as a homework assignment, first one is just talking about emotional literacy. Second week is talking about hosting a boring meeting. Third week is vocabulary. So as I have them talk about it, I want them, one, to label invisible labor that they do in their career and that they do at home. And then I encourage them to do the same thing for their partner, what their partner does in their career. If they're a stay-at-home parent, the thing that would get delegated to a nanny, if there was a nanny, and then things that would happen whether there's a nanny or not. So even just being able to say, in my day-to-day job, I'll take an example of, I'm going to say a sales manager. In my sales manager job, I do the cognitive labor of following up with my sales team, checking in on how big deals are going. Is there anything I need to do to help with those? Making sure my pipeline is updated for my boss to be able to see. The emotional labor that's in my career, and then the cognitive labor that I do at home. I am thinking about the grocery shopping that needs to happen, and do we have the ingredients that I'm planning on cooking for the night. My wife, in her job as a therapist, is she's making sure that the booking links are available so that people can book with her. So pretty much we're able to identify very specifically cognitive labor you can do in our career, in our home, or my partner's career in their home. I think that literally just having that vocabulary and being able to label stuff, I've done it specifically 300 plus times now. I think that in itself is a fantastic skill to have. Coming back to your question of like, how would I encourage and acknowledge that it is more emotional to do it? I think that, as you're saying, that a lot of women are exhausted. I think a huge part of it is they're feeling hurt, they're feeling lonely, that they're the only ones in this fight to bring up this language. And a lot of times it is being brought up in the context of their own validation. Whenever my most common DM question is, how do I explain emotional labor to my partner? And my same answer every time is, what do they do for work? And then if you'd like me to, I'm happy to make a video talking about the cognitive labor specific to that career, that position. I think when especially men can identify the cognitive labor, emotional labor, domestic labor that they do in their day-to-day jobs, that's probably not seen, that's invisible, that they know they're doing, but they probably feel even a little bit of loneliness about, then that skill, the objective skill of labeling those things can translate into the home space. I was talking to a police officer not long ago. They actually didn't believe in anything that I had to say. They're like, I think it's just all common sense. Like, I don't think it's cognitive labor or whatever the hell you call it. I was like, well, as a police officer, right? Like when you come to a situation, let's say it's a domestic violence call, you're getting the call, assessing the situation. You're looking to see if there's any weapons. You are probably looking for some disgruntled or like some very agitated people. You're probably really careful with your tone. You're probably trying to escalate things the least amount possible. You don't want to pull out your gun. You don't want to pull out a weapon. You don't want to tase anybody. You would love to hopefully de-escalate the situation. If someone needs to go in handcuffs, hopefully they go off peacefully. Probably not going to happen, but the tone in your management, while you might be feeling fear for yourself while you're doing that work, is emotional labor. I don't know how else I can put it that too. That is emotional labor. Looking and considering your surroundings, maybe knowing the neighborhood, knowing whether there's a back door, knowing if there's kids, if the logistics of the situation, making sure that when the person called in, that you are getting all those details correct and not forgetting them. I would call that cognitive labor. Maybe you wrote it down. Maybe you pulled out your phone to double check. Maybe you double checked to make sure you had your information right. That is cognitive labor. Yes, sure. Common sense. Common sense isn't that common. There's a lot of things that I'm honest with myself all the time in knowing that my memory doesn't work very well. Alyssa pointed out to me, she's like, hey, I feel like all the time I come out and the water dish for our cats is like gross. Like some dry food got in there, now it's yucky, and it's like the bowl is slimy. And then the cats don't drink out of it, and then they end up puking more because of it, and both of us clean up more cat puke. So one, knowing the impact of that was valuable, but me, I was like, shoot, I know that right now that's kind of an invisible dish to me because most of our relationship, she's managed that water dish, and she's asking me to do more about it. I need something to help me identify that. So it's been generally on my mind earlier today is like, I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to ChatGPT and say like, what are some encouraging things you might do to help me have better awareness of just something that's been invisible in plain sight for a long time? What can I do about it? If you have the emotional labor to explain things in any kind of way to your partner, I would highly encourage, just like I label for my child, hey, great job taking your boots off by yourself. Great job putting your snowsuit on by yourself. Hey, honey, it sounds like you did a lot of emotional labor for your boss earlier today. Hey, it sounds like you actually have to do a lot of cognitive labor for your employee, Dan, that always forgets his time card. Just the basic labeling of that in places where they feel confident. If you're already committed to doing emotional labor to solving this problem, that's the cognitive emotional labor I would encourage you to do more of. If you're sick of explaining things, just send them my videos. With a caveat, don't just send them my videos with no context. You got to give it some context because it'll probably be received as passive aggressive. So I guess if you want to solve the problem and you're tired, I mean, I think the other thing that I often say to people is emotional labor is going to be done which form of it is going to happen. If you do not like a situation that's in front of you, you're either going to do the emotional labor of going through a divorce, going through a separation, feeling unheard and managing your tone and pretending like things are okay. That's emotional labor itself. Or they want to do some level of emotional labor to have better conversations with their partner. That would be the kind I would encourage. I think it generally makes the world a better place.
It is a tricky situation because, like with what I do, right, I mostly help couples learn how to communicate better so that they can understand each other better, understand themselves better, and have that lead to more partnership, more connection, all of what they want, right? It's just that the communication piece is an obstacle. They're arguing a lot or they're just not understanding each other. And I often hear from the women, why do I have to do this? I've already done enough. And what I often say is like, sure, you have done a lot. And you can either gripe about it and hold on to resentment and complain about it, maybe end up separating and divorcing, or you can be like, okay, I acknowledge that there are things that I want him to change. Are there things that I can do differently to help influence this to have a better outcome? Can I be vulnerable enough with myself and my partner and think, is there something that I can do to grow too? This isn't all them. This is a partnership problem. So can I do something to feel proud of how I showed up? Can I, at the end of the day, like wash my hands of this and say, I legitimately think that I did everything that I could have done to help this situation improve? Or are you okay with being really angry, being really resentful and saying, screw this, I'm out, and wonder if something could have helped the situation?
Yeah, and I know this is like a lower stakes parallel, but I went through this with my college friends. I wanted a better relationship with them. We had been friends since before I met my wife, and over the years, you know, you grow apart 'cause you're physically not there near each other.
Proximity.
So like all the college things like are not available to you. So it takes kin keeping and emotional labor and cognitive labor to schedule things and make things happen. And at some point I said to myself, I want more out of these friendships, I want more out of these relationships. I want to be able to be more vulnerable. I know I need more frequency of communication. I'm not willing to meet up for drinks once a month. I'm not even probably willing to do that once a quarter. That sounds like way too much for the depth that I currently have with these guys. And so I was like, okay, what I can do, the relationships I do want, is I would be willing to send a weekly 1 to 3 minute video or an audio message, and, you know, have it be in a small group chat where we get to know each other and better as we're growing older. Because I heard about this Waffle Wednesday these guys did in Australia. So like, that is the effort I'm willing to put into this relationship. And I think that if they would be willing to too, then that would be worthwhile. And they were a no. They're like, I don't think that's going to do anything. That doesn't sound cool. That sounds like homework. Like, I'm good. I was like, okay, they're not the friends that I need in my life right now. And so then I approached my 3 other guy friends in a different setting. And they're like, okay, you can try that. Let's try it. And we've been doing it now for 1.5 years. And it's awesome.
It's
so
they
proud
were
of my
more
friend
aligned with what your goals were. And I love that you found that.
Yeah. And so kind of coming back to like, I had been complaining about my friends. I would play phone tag with them. It was just not the depth of relationship that I wanted. And I think there was maybe a grieving process of like, I was sad that it wasn't what I wanted it to be. And also I was like, what am I willing to put in? Am I willing to show up a certain amount? How much am I willing to put up? Because if I want a depth of relationship, I got to be putting in something too. And so once I figured out what my threshold was, like what I was willing to put in for effort, then I just need to see if they're willing to uphold the other side. And I think that's one thing I don't love about my job, and probably you too, is you don't get to see people when they're in maintenance mode. You see people when they're in crisis mode, when they are debating, like, is this the end? Like, I don't love that my courses are often used as an ultimatum in themselves, like do the work with Zach or it's over. But yeah, that's the pain of, I guess, being in this place. But hopefully this free content will be much more useful for people that are in some pain but not in crisis.
Yeah. I mean, thankfully, I do have some clients who come back and they're like, okay, we need a refresher. We're doing good, but we kind of fell off in this area. Can you help us with this? We're having trouble, using the tools that you taught us. And so those are my favorite. I also love people who preemptively come, like they're not in crisis. They're like, but we see the pattern that we're starting to develop. We can see where this may end up. Please help us restructure how we do things. Please give us the tools and all of that. Shifting topics here, I've heard the phrase weaponize incompetence a lot on Instagram.
Yeah.
I happen to know that you have strong opinions about this phrase.
Yeah.
Could you please share?
Sure. I don't love that phrase. Here's why. I think it's overused, and although I don't love this metaphor, I think it clarifies it the best. It is akin to, let's see, murder 1, I think, is the highest penalty. I can't remember if it's murder 1 or murder 3, but when someone is charged with, we'll say, first-degree murder, that's like they have intent, they planned it out, they were fully prepared to do and execute on something they were going to do. That's what weaponized incompetence to me is. They're saying, okay, I'm sick of doing dishes. I'm going to purposely do it wrong so that my wife is like, fuck that, I'm never having him do that again. Or I'm going to screw up the kids' clothes so that she never asks me to clothe the kids again. That's weaponized incompetence to me. It's like a murder 1 premeditation level. Now, some people disagree with me, and that's just not what their definition of weaponized incompetence. And I think looking at myself, there have been so many moments. A really great example, I think, a couple weeks ago, I was putting away laundry. I couldn't find the other pink sock. There was a pink and a purple one. They're very similar shades, and I was like, I'm just going to pair these two together. I don't think anyone's going to notice. I was lazy in the moment. I didn't feel like searching for 2 minutes to try to find it. I think I searched maybe 15 seconds. I looked through the pile, looked through the randos, didn't see it in there. Do I pair them? Do I not pair them? I would rather, I don't think our child's going to notice. I would call that selfish negligence, where sure, there's going to be a little bit of an impact. Maybe not. I'm being a little selfish in that I'm not going to take an extra multiple minutes to go potentially fix the situation, but I'm going to be a little lazy here. Now, I think that there are plenty of people on the internet that would call that weaponized incompetence. I think that's more like some people, maybe like drunk driving or like negligent homicide, where there's an impact. I'm pretty sure there's no drunk drivers out there that say, I want to really hurt somebody tonight. They're being selfish in a very scary way. In that example, I was being selfish. Sure. I was being potentially negligent of our child's experience when she's like, hey, these socks don't match. I was okay with that potentially happening. I also felt like the likelihood is very low. So I've made those two differentiations. And then I think the middle one, I would say, is like chronic selfish negligence, where, hey, I feel really lonely when I'm the only one paying attention to whether the soap gets done or that you put your beard shavings in and you haven't changed. And so they are not doing a thing. They're not trying to hurt their partner, in my opinion. They're also not doing the cognitive labor to create awareness for themselves. Like, oh, shoot, yeah, you're right. I do leave my shavings out in the sink all the time. What can I do about that? Let's see. And then thinking through, like even putting a sticky note into where their shaver is saying, make sure to clean up when you're done. So I think there are a lot of people that feel like it's intentional at some point when they're not putting in that effort. And so I would call that chronic selfish negligence or chronic negligent selfishness, because it's really inconsiderate of the other person. At the same time, I don't think it's aimed to get them to do something for them. I don't think most guys that leave their beard shavings out are saying like, I get to just never do this ever again, so she's going to have to clean it up. I don't think they're thinking that. So it's a differentiation in thinking. And I think also, especially a lot of women, I think that feel like, how can he not see how much pain I'm in? And I think that kind of goes back to why we call it invisible labor, because so many men have been taught and trained by patriarchal systems, by TV sitcoms in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, that we see these bumbling idiot men that we're supposed to look up to, and then we get to shrug our shoulders and act like them when we're saying, well, these are the role models we got. So I think it makes sense why women feel so hurt and so like abandoned in this way. So coming down to like where the rubber meets the road, the question is, do you use the word weaponized incompetence or not when you're having a conversation? I would bet it creates more defensiveness than constructive shock value. I think if you were saying, I just feel like you're kind of selfish around this and you're pretty negligent, and I feel like I've asked this a lot of times, it feels like you're chronically, selfishly negligent. I can imagine that my wife has not used that with me, so I don't have firsthand experience on that. I would bet that conversation sparks more introspection on his part than saying, this is weaponized incompetence. I don't think that creates conversation.
And that phrase, weaponized incompetence, is a lot more aggressive and blame forward, because you're also saying incompetent. What man wants to hear that he's incompetent in something? That sounds like you're an idiot, versus what it really is, a lack of observational skills, or underdeveloped observational skills, I'll say, awareness. And I feel like if you're going to call him an idiot, he's not going to have much motivation to change that. Yeah. And then there's learned helplessness based on what they saw their fathers do. I don't know, ask your mother. Basically, like, go away. I don't know anything. I'm not motivated to find out more or fill in, be an equal substitute on this matter. Yeah. And so there's a lot of that, right? And I like that this is more of a recent topic that's coming up, because there's a lot of things, and I'll liken this to, having our kids do chores too. I am very surprised by the amount of families that don't have their kids do chores. I grew up as a person that had very minimal chores because my mom had a very different background. She was the youngest girl, and in traditional Chinese culture, boys are prized. Like, they're everything. They're passing down the name. They don't do shit. They're untouchable. And she was the youngest female, and so she had to do all of the cooking, cleaning, all the things, right? And so she wanted to save us and help my sister and I have a childhood. So she basically did all the chores. I literally, and I'm a little bit embarrassed to share this, but I'm willing to, and I have before, that, I would go out on weekends, have fun. I would come back, my bathroom's clean. It always stayed in a perpetual state of clean. Come college, I live off on my own with roommates, and I'm like, gosh, this place is so old. Why is it so nasty? And I literally thought that our bathrooms got nasty because the house was old. Not because of regular use, but because I literally never saw, mildew or just like, the residual stuff from toothpaste and dead skin cells and whatever it is accumulate over time from not being cleaned up on a weekly basis. Yeah. And like, I'll be damned if my kids grow up like that, right? Yeah. But it's also a disservice to me as a future adult to not learn those skills. And so coming back to the marriage front, it's like, well, you can continue to gripe about it, or you can partner with your husband or whoever it is that isn't, taking on their fair share, and figure out, okay, what can we do about this? Do you need to shadow me? Do you need to watch videos and figure out your own preferred way of handling this? Like, what is it? Because I don't think one person should handle everything, period.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one that comes up, definitely weaponized incompetence has never been a thing, but I think for sure when we look at, my 4-year-old has like fairly long hair, maybe about the length of yours. And my wife has had long hair all of her life. I had it maybe 6 inches for a good 3 months. And that's about it. So like hair care is a long learning curve for me. And like there are moments where it is turned into learned helplessness, where Alyssa will take things away from me, partially because she knows there's going to be impact. Because if there's a monster mat in her hair, and I do it wrong, then she's going to be in pain and then not let us brush her hair again in the next 2 days. So there have been times where it's turned into similar in helplessness, but at the same time, like I often push back on Alyssa. I'm like, please, dear God, let me fail. And there's sometimes when the impacts are too heavy for her to let that happen. And I struggle with that often. And I do try to ask for not like a puppy dog feedback, but I try to be like, hey, give me like scale 1 to 10, give me some feedback, like how did I do here? And then I'll often say, again, to not put the full mental emotional labor on her, I think I did a 7. I think the hair part is a little off center. I think I probably could have done the left piggy tail again, and I was just I'm not doing it again. I'm sorry. She's too wiggly this morning. So I feel like there's care, especially because Alyssa also had 2 younger siblings. I'm an only child, so she did a fair amount of caretaking. I think there's a 5-year difference. So when she was a 9-year-old, she was taking care of a 4-year-old sometimes. I did not have that. The first baby I ever held was my child at age 31 or 30.
Which is not uncommon for males. So we have to, as women and as partners, have to meet our partners where they're at too, and not expect the same level of experience when we've had a lot more opportunities and a lot more, I hate this word because it has like connotations of abuse, like SA, but like we've been groomed to notice certain things and to care for other people, take other people into consideration, and all that, like even with
you've
the type
also
of
been
toys we had.
taught to feel shame when you don't see those things. And so many of us men have not been taught to feel shame when we don't do certain things.
That's right.
We've been taught shame when we're not earning enough money, and or the women and or children in our lives hurt or like somehow not protected by something. And I would say when, you know, our lawn is not mowed or like the exterior of our home doesn't
mostly
appear.
Physical things.
Yeah.
Right? Achievement based or safety based.
Which,
whereas
fun fact,
men,
I think for sure, like when you see those videos that seem ridiculous of like men with a leaf blower right before Thanksgiving, and they're like, why the fuck is he clearing like some dead branches in the side yard that no one's going to see? They're going to be spending all 9 hours in here with us in the living room and the dining room. Why is he out there? It's because a lot of us men have been taught to feel shame in the exterior of the house. A lot of women have been taught to feel shame by what the interior of the house looks like.
Oh, I love that. Because there's definitely a lot of conversations that I've had with my husband to reprioritize.
Yeah.
Because he's one of those people that have in the past, like, started working in the garage. I'm like, why? Literally no one's going to go in here. They walk in through the front door. Can we focus on, I don't know, setting out the paper plates and you food prepping, or you tidying up while I'm doing the food prep? Like, do something that's more immediately impactful to what's about to happen.
Yeah.
And so that helped him kind of be like, oh, you're right. And so, but that's good background information, because I never understood, like, what did you just like come up with something random to do so that you're out of the way and not like
and that,
within
and that
reaching?
It makes me think of, like, it could be a good short form content video is like list of things that I will feel shame if are not done. And then the wife looks at her list and there's all the indoor things. And then I remember there's one video I saw of like a guy, like he was like dusting off the TV screen in his garage workshop right before Thanksgiving. Because if another guy were to go check out his workshop or his man cave or something, that he wants it to look like it's a nice place to go do some woodworking or work on like some household project or something. So I think whatever we often see men and we're confused by, if we were to chalk that up to, let me list the things that I would feel shame if we're not done when someone came by. I think it happened to me once. We hosted Thanksgiving and I wanted to manage some of the boxes in the basement because I wanted people to go down there and have it feel spacious. Did not feel space. It was just all boxes that we never dealt with in the 2 years that we lived there. And like, that was my thought, is like, I want this to look like it's spacious. And Alyssa was like, you're nuts. And I didn't even have this language for it then. It took me another probably 6 months to figure it out later.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that because you could also just decide, oh, no one's going in the basement.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's shift over and start addressing men.
Hmm.
Okay. Because, like I said, like this is not meant to bash
Yeah.
men at all. Like, if anything, I want this to be a resource that helps both sides to have shared language and also hopefully have you walk away with some things that you can take action on and start to change your perspective on how to approach this differently. There is a saying where men will be like, oh, just let me know how I can help. All you have to do is just tell me what to do.
Yeah. Write me a list.
And that pisses females off
Yep.
like to no end.
No end.
And they're like, well, how can you blame me? I'm asking you what I can do. So they have good intentions. Like,
Yeah.
thank you for even thinking of asking. Can you kind of break down what they can do differently that would have a better impact?
I think the like most implementable thing that like in the next hour could be implemented is, and this was pretty much where the mental load series started, was similar to, if we come back to that math example, math test, open-ended question versus multiple choice. The only thing you could make it easier for, and I'm going to just pull out, like, if you ever took the SATs, imagine how much less painful the SATs would have been if there was a pre-circled answer if you didn't respond to anything. So you're about to take the test, and then they say, and by the way, anytime you're just not sure what the answer is, it just defaults to C. That the answer is C if you don't put anything in there. And then you're like, okay, I don't even have the decision fatigue of making a guess anymore. And if we think about it, I think it was some Nordic country. The way that you apply for your license, you're a default organ donor and you have to check the box no.
Love that.
And in that country, comparatively to America, let me get the numbers wrong. It's like 10% of Americans are organ donors because they have to check
What?
yes. It's probably larger than that, but it was aggressively low number is what I
Lower,
remember. I don't remember what it actually was. Maybe it's probably bigger than 10. And then in the Nordic country, it was like 80, 90% or something. And it's literally just the way that they have the form set up because it creates decision fatigue. So coming back, I think that if there's any given time that, guys, you want to exercise your brain in the way that your wife thinks more of, and you want to be taking on more of the mental load, anytime you have a question, just like a math test, show your work if necessary, and or offer multiple choice questions with a default response, or give her a to-do, triple option, default option. So, hey honey, what do you want for dinner tonight? I'm thinking we could do chicken broccoli Alfredo. We got to use up the beef sooner. It's going to go bad. I was thinking we could do tacos, or I know we've done those things pretty recently. I'm feeling lazy tonight. I don't know if you are. We could order out pizza. I'm thinking we go for the tacos because I'd like to use up that meat. If you say nothing, I'm doing tacos.
I love this because not only have you thought of different options, but because now it's just her thinking about what she would like. And if she doesn't care, then you can just go with the default answer of what you came up with based on, again, you showing your work of how you arrived at that decision. Now, I'm sure that that can feel really validating to your wife because what you just spoke out loud is what she would have gone through in her head.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so much consideration that goes into meal planning.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I have 3 kids. Okay, so it's like, I know at least one person is going to complain about what's for dinner.
Mm-hmm.
And I absolutely hate when my son, who is my more selective eater, always asks me, what's for dinner? And it's like, I spend so much effort to think about what would he be okay with, but also what will expand his palate going forward. Even if he doesn't like it right now, I still have to think about the future, right? And that's just one person in my family. And so I love that you're like, okay, these are the options, but like I'm leaning towards this because I want to use up the beef before it goes bad so that we can, utilize what we've already spent money on and all that. So I love that you just gave a very concrete example of how you can alleviate some of that mental load on your wife. And if she has a strong opinion, she still has the ability to choose otherwise. And you're giving that choice, because what female doesn't like to have a say in things, right?
And I'll say for sure, while Alyssa's been pregnant, like things that are historically great for her, she's like, I can't even imagine stomaching that right now. So sometimes I will put it back on her. So I'll say like, here are the 3 things I'm thinking. And she's like, none of those sound good to me. Like, okay, ball is in your court. Like it occurs to me, I've done my duty, but you got to give me something.
Yeah.
I can't work with nothing.
Yeah. Love that. Love that. Okay. Now let's talk about shifting from helping to co-leading. What is something that you help your clients do to make that shift? Because I think that's what all women want, is an equal partner. And when I say equal, I don't mean like, okay, if I do this and you have to like find a task that's equally intensive or takes just as much time, but whatever feels fair to you in your home, right? And not feel like all the decision falls on her, all the planning falls on her, all the execution falls on her, all the ownership falls on her.
So this is going to be a boring answer.
Okay.
Pun intended. Is start running a weekly meeting or run a board meeting. So what that looks like, 3 main stages that I encourage my clients to do, is 1, the first stage, first month-ish, is just practice getting a meeting on the books and execute on it. Show up with a list of 4 bullet points. I encourage for like beginners, I would say, look at your calendar 2 months ahead. If there's anything on your calendar that requires communication, buying tickets, following up on the hotel, signing permission slips, any kind of labor that's involved, show up to that meeting either saying what you think needs to get done or show up having done it and double checking your work and showing your work, sort of. And then the second item that you can, within these 2 things, you can definitely pull 4 bullet points from. What is a recent not fun conversation that you had? And of that not fun conversation, what is 1 action step and or maybe reflective conversation you can have to not have that same conversation happen again? So, hey, you were supposed to do the kitty litter yesterday. Why haven't you done it? I'm saying that out loud to also remember that I got to do kitty litter today. Hey, I was feeling lonely the other day that you didn't do the kitty litter. And then you come to that meeting saying, hey, I recognize you're probably feeling some feelings about that. Here's what I'm doing currently so that you don't have to come to me again. It's in my calendar, and I know that I do better with reminders, so I have alarms set up for Tuesdays and Fridays. So that's like the basics, is start with some basic logistics. And then I teach people to use the Connection Codes core emotion wheel and kind of reset their emotional literacy and fluency once we're in phase 2, about the second month. Once you have like your first handful of meetings, usually 4 meetings, once I feel like you've gotten your habit in place, then we'll amp up the weight of the conversations, keep it pretty logistical, especially if people are like doing a lot of arguing and there's a lot of emotional dysregulation. Keep it kind of surface level. Then we'll add emotions. Once you can talk about your emotions too and not turn into a shouting match every time, then we'll add the fair play cards, and where I encourage people to do, I call it the 51% activity. If you were to use the fair play cards, I often recommend people use the Persist app, timeforpersist.com. It's pretty much a digital version of the cards, and there's a free plan. So you don't have to, unless there's a spreadsheet nerd out there. I know some people love their spreadsheets, but it kind of does stuff for you. Identify where the general responsibilities exist in your home. Who owns 51% of any given thing? Guys, I encourage you to be very generous and assume that there's probably some things you're missing about things that might feel like 50-50. Just identify where the cards fall. Try not to judge each other too hard on where things are. I know that's going to be hard. And then identify, and this is where me and Fair Play are a little bit different than probably how people historically work. Let's say Alyssa does 100% of laundry. Then most people would say, you know what, Zach, you take over laundry because I do all of that and I don't want to do it anymore. Instead, what I would encourage is let's take something that Zach already does 90% on, which inevitably I can already tell you what you're thinking about is trash or dishes. Take on something that the guy owns 90% of, and let's figure out how he can own that last 10%, so that he's already probably doing the physical labor of it. He's probably doing a fair amount of the mental. Let's make sure he also is doing the emotional and the conception of it. So when we started Trash and Dishes, it was, she was reminding me to do the trash. I was physically doing it. She was reminding me to do the dishes, and then I was physically doing it. And we just said, Zach's just going to do dishes now, and here's the standard of care. So once you can get the hang of owning 100% rather than 90, and taking the mental piece off, the emotional piece off, then I think you're set up much better to continue down the process of fair play versus what a lot of people do. And talked about on a podcast with Eve. I don't encourage what she talks about in the book, which is do a 7-hour deep dive and create a minimum standard of care of
That is overwhelming.
15 different things. One, it's overwhelming. Two, it sets you up for disaster on week 2. If you don't have your weekly meeting time set up already, you have no opportunity for constructive feedback, and it turns into resentment, build up, and then you end up in this like do better loop that I talk about, where it turns into, I'll do better. And then there's no opportunity for that release valve unless it's a counseling or therapy session together. And so the resentment just keeps building up and then ending in a fight, builds up, ends in a fight. Versus if you have that weekly meeting set up, then you're talking about operations the way you would in a corporate setting.
Yeah, it builds habits. It's like baby steps, right?
Yeah.
Like you said, scaffolding instead of like jumping right in. It kind of like, I say that with how my couples can improve whatever they're working on together, right? It's like, come New Year, you have a resolution. I'm going to lose however many pounds, and I'm going to go to the gym 5 times a week. And it's like, that's not sustainable because it's such a far stretch from what you're currently doing.
Yeah. Whenever I'm thinking about New Year's resolutions, like, and it's November or early December, I'm like, I'm not going to do it if I don't start it now. So like recently I've been like, I think it was like late November, I was like, I've not been working out enough. I'm just going to start doing 10 push-ups a day at a minimum. I'm just getting my foot in the door so that I am remembering I need to move my body, and then I'll slowly add to it. I need the habit more than I need drastic, colossal, dramatic action.
Right. And also, like, if you feel like doing more, you can. But like, let's set the bar in a way where it's like, oh, easy peasy, no big deal. Right? Like, we have to do that in order to form the habit and then start to add to it. But don't just like, okay, we're going to go into it full force. Like, it's not going to be sustainable.
Yeah.
Okay. So I want to address what it could be an obstacle in doing this. And that is the fear, the discomfort that may be experienced by men. Can we talk about what you often notice in yourself and in your male clients, so that we can give the females some like insight behind the scenes of what might be creating resistance in them, so that they can approach their partners with more compassion?
Yeah. And, I'll say from the boring meeting standpoint, I think I've been trying to do them for 10 years. We started like 10 years ago, fell off 2 months in, did them probably 6 years ago, fell off 2 weeks in. And it took till me coaching people to do it for me to really get it to stick. Even still, like, we'll go through a new season of life and it'll fall off for a month. And then like, we'll figure out a new time that we need to do it because we're too tired, or a meeting change that is recurring, or her daycare, she goes to a new daycare and the time of the morning changes. So I think a mantra that has helped me out many times over the past decade is give yourself permission to fail. In knowing that as long as you keep showing up and trying is not a failure. Even if you don't have the meeting, but it was on the calendar, that's a bigger win than if it was never on the calendar in the first place and you're just abandoning the conversation. I think for the guys that are listening to this, I really encourage you to say like, hey honey, like I listen to this podcast. I'm trying to, especially my clients, they'll say like, throw me under the bus. Like say, Zach told me to do this. I know there's a lot of guys that come scared to that meeting that they're going to start talking about things and it's going to blow up in their face. And our goal is to kind of reset how we talk about these operational things, because I know there is a lot of resentment that's built up for a lot of people. So looking at it as an opportunity to reset how we're having these conversations, because eventually I think when Alyssa and I are operating at our best level, we're going through a new operational thing. We're talking about the standard of care, and then we'll do an emotion wheel and she'll say like, ooh, yeah, like I think I feel some anger that it's been going that way. I feel some lonely that I feel like I'm the only one thinking about it. I feel some shame and that I feel like the neighbors are probably going to judge us for it. So like bring emotions into why we're choosing those operational things. That's the end goal. And you got to give yourself permission that you're not going to get there in 4 or 8. It might take you 12 weeks or longer or way longer. But I think just consistently showing up, getting your foot in the door is a bigger win than you're going to want to make it. And that's why I encourage people to celebrate that with me rather than your partner. So say, hey, Zach, I had my first boring meeting. It lasted 12 minutes before we got in a fight, but we still scheduled another one. Like DM me that shit. Like, let me know that you're trying and failing rather than never having tried at all because you're too scared of what emotional conversation might come from it. I think that would be the main pitfall people fall into, is they're afraid of what's going to happen when it happens. And most of the guys I work with, they're really pleasantly surprised. The fact that they even set an agenda or set a calendar invite, showed up and had something to talk about instead of a blank slate. Like, again, sad that the bar is this low, but sometimes their wives are like, holy shit, he did it.
Yeah, I mean, women really like when men show up with a sense of direction.
Yeah.
And that is vastly different from what women have experienced before, which is like, it almost feels like they're the principal calling in a student that misbehaved or did something wrong, right? And they're kind of just like sitting there in the chair waiting to be told what to do or where they went wrong or how they're failing. And the fact that you're even willing to put yourself in a vulnerable position to maybe have the conversation end up turning on you, but you know that you're there for the purpose of showing up, for the purpose of creating space for her to share, hey, these are the things that are going on. These are the things I want changed. Not to say that you can't also share that. Like, you can come into the conversation with things too. Like I highly recommend all couples to go through like a marriage 360 review, which means that it's not just one way. It's like, hey, what are things that you would like me to do more often? What are things that you would like me to be more mindful of? And have that be a two-way conversation so that it doesn't feel like one person's being ganged up on. I think all we're trying to say is, let's do our best to come into this process ready to have things unfold and revealed and be vulnerable, but also like, let's try and remove shame wherever we can. Let's show up in a way where like, we're going to talk to our partner in the way that we would like to be talked to, in a way that there's compassion and respect and kindness, even if you are feeling angry, because you can still do that. It takes more effort, but you're going to have a much better conversation and it's going to be way more productive if you do that work beforehand, if you regulate yourself beforehand, if you know when to hit pause on the conversation because it's escalating into something that you don't want to be a part of, where someone's disengaging or getting more aggressive. Okay, this is what I'm hoping you can work towards to achieve more of a balanced partnership where both people truly feel like you have each other's backs, that the house won't fall apart if one person's down, which is going to happen because kids bring in nasty germs into the house, right? When they get sick, it's like everybody else just falls like dominoes.
Game over.
Right? And so what is one piece of advice that you would offer to women, and then a different piece of advice you would offer to men to take that first step?
I think I'm going to come back to what I said earlier for women is I would really encourage labeling invisible labor, which I think in itself can create really great conversations. Recently, there was an upset. I was at my in-laws' house. My mother-in-law ordered pizza. My father-in-law went to pick it up. So they weren't already not on the same page. When he got back, he missed one of the pizzas. It was for my wife who's pregnant. My mother-in-law was super upset about it. He was agitated, but I don't think he paused to like think about where she was coming from. My sister-in-law, at one point, so because they're currently in my program, which I'm really excited about, I paused and said, Lynn, it sounds like you're feeling this because you did the cognitive labor of I started labeling for them. It sounds like you did. I actually know because you asked me earlier what I wanted for dinner. You did the cognitive labor, putting the order. You did the clerical labor of actually putting the order. You did the communication to Greg about what time to go pick it up and what the order was, and texted a picture of the receipt that she got. And Greg, you did the labor of physically going to pick it up. What you missed was some of the cognitive labor of like inspecting what you're actually picking up, matching the receipt. He turned out he felt shame about it. He felt guilt about it. She felt lonely. She felt sad. She felt hurt. My sister-in-law, when I said this out loud, she's like, I don't care about what I don't care that she did that. He went out of his way to go pick up the pizza. And so she had that moment of like totally declining to acknowledge the invisible labor of it, which brought up a great conversation for later. So even just the labeling of things is going to bring up some small uncomfortable conversations that I think are going to move the ball forward.
And what about for men?
For men, I mean, if you're listening to this, I would encourage you to do the same, is start acknowledging your partner of their invisible labor. I think that's a smaller first step. It's like a tiptoe. If you can start saying, I would challenge you. I have a 21-day challenge that is like kind of meant for this, but on a daily basis, start doing what I did in TikTok in 2022, which was, I think I just had a mental labor for you. I asked this question and I asked it this way. Is that accurate? I think when you're in a place of gratitude, acknowledgement, working on your own awareness, and asking, can you tell? It feels like you're probably doing more labor than meets the eye, like an iceberg. What I'm seeing is this. What I'm guessing is this. What else am I missing? I think a willingness to inspect, and also you can preface it with like, hey, it occurs to me that you're probably feeling lonely about this. You can just assume. I think that's the number one emotion with it. But if you want to be asking your partner, don't ask what's on their mental load. I think that's a terrible question, and we've discussed why. But if you're trying to label for them what mental load you think they're owning, and then asking, what am I missing? That's a very different question, again, because it validates like, oh shit, he noticed that I made the list. He noticed that I considered the priorities. He noticed X, Y, and Z. What he missed is this. I think you're going to get a much kinder response from your wife saying like, well, yeah, those are pretty good. I did do X, Y, and Z also. Thank you for acknowledging that.
Yeah. And I think as you were saying that made me think of how, going back to how men, whether it's nature or nurture, both, how you guys tend to be more like achievement based, even like engineer minded. Like, oh, I wonder how something works. Like if you think about a car, like lots of guys are into cars. Like I won't even pretend to know what to say, but something about like under the hood, all that stuff, how it works, whatever. You can apply that same methodology to, this Christmas party went off without a hitch. I wonder what went into this to have that happen. Because a lot of moms now feel like they are like the magic maker. Right? I don't know if you've heard that, but it's like, this shit doesn't just happen. It's not like you have this magic wand and all of a sudden it's like, woo!
We had an entire boring meeting 3 weeks ago about Christmas magic and what that entails and what that will look like if it's successfully executed by both of us.
Yes. So, guys, if you're like, I don't know where to start, do that. Do like a postmortem of like, oh, this happened. Even family photos. Family photos are very stressful to a lot of women, from the outfit picking to maybe even the site that the photos are taken, picking a photographer, picking the amount of time that the session will take, making sure the kids are going to want to be there. Like, it's a lot.
You'd love to, I'm forgetting her first name, but they're co-founders, but Famtography. She's an awesome Instagram account, and they help men get better photography and not having women feel alone in being the main photographers in the house. That role is reversed in our house. I'm typically the main photographer and or videographer for obvious reasons.
Okay, love that. But anyway, I know this conversation has been really, really long, listeners. And Zach did warn me that it would be this long. And I was like, no, it won't, because normally my episodes are this long. It'll be fine. He was right. I was wrong. But I feel like there was nothing that I would cut out. This is a very long overdue kind of conversation that I'm so glad that we got to have. Zach, it's been a pleasure to be able to hear from your perspective of how families can start to do this differently. Because it doesn't just fall on the woman, and it doesn't just fall on the man either. It's not like, well, I've been doing all this shit all this time. You're at fault for not doing enough. And so all this falls on you. No, this is a partnership. And what happens in a partnership? What happens in a team? You guys work together to figure this shit out and to implement new ways of doing things, to collaborate. That's really what the essence is of all of this, to succeed. Okay. So Zach, please let people know, first of all, tell us more about your course. And second of all, where can people connect with you if they're like, okay, I really need to follow this guy, learn more from him, and maybe even listen to his videos like on speakerphone around my husband?
Yeah. So if you go on Instagram, Zach Mental Load Coach, you can find me, and or if you search Recovering Man Child, you'll probably find me. It's not my handle, but it's my, when you look at rappers these days, I feel like they have their stage name and then they have their fun name. Like Eminem is the real Slim Shady. It's like my real Slim Shady. But yeah, I would say if you're in a place where you know that your partner is probably not ready for this conversation, probably play one of my videos out loud. I've actually heard of that working before. I'll also admit that I did get a client. He was so excited. He's like, yeah, I found you first. Turned out his wife followed me on his account. Like, she went onto his phone and followed me. I don't love that. I know that's a little manipulative.
Crossing the line. Yeah.
But I would say if people are looking for like a little bit of resources, you can definitely go to my free school community. It gives you the first 2 weeks of my curriculum and or my mental load 101 documents, like 300 of my videos squished into one. If people are like looking for some support, looking for a little bit of crisis, they are in a not great place. And I know, I hate to say it, but January is the #1 month for divorces. I would encourage you to grab a free consult call with me. I would hope it's easy to find the link for that, but I'll share with you guys the link for the free community. And if you DM me over there, happy to help.
Love it. Okay, ladies and men, because I know there are some guys who listen, and I appreciate you so much. That was a really full, deep, resourceful even conversation, and I'm hoping that you're really going to not just like listen to this and kind of just go on with your day. I'm hoping that you can now take this new lens and start to view how you move through life together differently. How can you start to bring in more partnership so that you can have more connection? Because that's really what you want out of your marriage, right? You want to get along. You want to have fun again. You want to have sex more often, and not feel like, oh, too tired, or she's not interested anymore. There's probably a reason why. She's probably holding a lot of resentment. And so she's not as attracted to you. She's not motivated to work on her libido or do anything to initiate. Okay. There are reasons why. And if you can show up as a different partner for her, she will want to start working on being a better partner for you. Okay. That is just how it works. So really take this episode to heart and see what you can start to do differently, even if it's just one thing. Just changing yourself 1% somehow can make a huge difference in your marriage and how you two currently do things together. Okay. If you love what Zach has shared, please go follow him. Go check out his free community. Go check out all the things that he offers, because you can surely benefit from it. I know I have learned some things that I want to have a conversation with my husband about just from our conversation. So thank you. If you know someone that could benefit from this, which is basically all married couples, please share this with them. Better yet, tag us in your Instagram stories and share this episode on Instagram, and we'll give you a shout out. If you love this show, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you. Please leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen. I would so appreciate that. That's what helps this show grow and helps more people like you get the help that they need. All right, that's it for today. Thanks again, Zach. I'll catch you all back here on the next episode. Bye.
That's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making it. If you did, please send me a message over on Instagram at Michelle Perda Coaching to let me know what you loved most about it. Hearing from my listeners is my absolute favorite. And if you've been loving this podcast, please leave a rating and review. This will help people like you find the show and get the help they need. Catch you here on the next episode. Bye.